Welcome. This is David Bowles' Human Meme. Today's topic, why do we trust each other? And today's topic was requested by Ashley Bonner, who asked me on Twitter to do a podcast about why humans remain so trusting. On Twitter, Ashley Bonner, username @AshAnAuthor, asked this: could you do a podcast on why humans remain so trusting? I replied, asking Ashley to send me an email with the details of her inquiry so I might be better able to answer her. She replied on Twitter, "I'll send an email. Your podcast got me to thinking about it. I can't help but think, in that regard, we remain childlike. Maybe our trusting nature keeps us a primitive species." And before I could answer her on Twitter, she tweeted this: "Honestly, I think if I found an answer that made sense, I wouldn't believe it." So now what? Do I continue on or just give up in her predeterminate futility? And then, moments later, she emailed me the following, and through her thoughtful inquiry, I thought it would be best to try to do my duty and answer her disbelief. Ashley, first, I love your podcasts. They're mind-opening. I'd love to see a podcast for the topic of human nature remaining trusting. I say thank you for the email. I look forward to having this conversation with you. Ashley continues, I think our trusting nature makes us childlike. No matter how much we age or how many times we're hurt, we still have hope that good will follow. I think this keeps us a young, primitive species because our trusting nature can block our forward growth. As in, because we trust that the next time the same situation comes, the outcome will be different. We don't learn from that situation. We don't teach our children that the situation is detrimental. They learn to have hope for change, just like those before them. So every generation we start over, as children. I say, I'm not sure I understand the we are children argument. We trust each other because we really have no other choice. Because the only other choice is to not trust each other. And generally speaking, we're better off together than apart. And that has been true since we emerged from the caves. Community, unity, togetherness, now perhaps cliched and pat and phony. But there was a time when trusting each other by default, and not being suspicious by nature by default, meant we moved forward as a society. Or we all went our disparate ways and we were all dead. My first personal manager in New York City was Kurt Gebauer. And Kurt said this to me after I was pre-upset by a meeting I was about to have, where I was quite certain I was going to be flipped. And Kurt calmly and wisely said, "You cannot know that. You cannot think people are out to get you until they do. If you think otherwise, if you think someone is going to get over on you before you get over on them, then you are leading a small and mealy life. Don't be that way. Trust by nature. Believe in other people first. And then, if they mess you over, they did it on their own, without you." I appreciated Kurt's advice, and it was difficult to let go of the feeling that I was on a roller coaster speeding into a concrete wall. And we had that meeting, and it was just as horrible as expected. And yet I didn't feel any better that I knew what was going to happen before it happened. And that's when I learned Kurt was right. Attitude and energy and expectation are everything. Don't poison a relationship before it begins. Trust first. Hate later. There's always room to hate everything later. But you only have one chance to show and earn someone's trust from the start. Ashley continues, a trusting nature isn't inherently a bad thing, of course, but I do wonder if it slows the growth of our species. We have these magnificent brains that can do so many things, and yet we fight like children. Every new invention is a shiny toy that we don't know what to do with, and then we cast it aside. We build nuclear weapons, then hide them underground, hoard them, afraid to actually pull out the big guns because we fear death. Me. Deterrence alone can be a big cudgel, especially if you don't have to use a weapon to have its influence felt. During the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, Khrushchev said, "You press your sword into something until you feel steel, and then you stop." Kennedy blockaded Cuba, and teetering on the edge of nuclear war for 2 weeks, Kennedy steeled us, and he beat the Russians with determination and belief and trust in the system, and he won. Russia backed off and backed down. I don't think we fear death. Death is all around us. Death is a part of us. What we fear is the total annihilation of the planet. Then, everything we've done truly will have been for nothing. Ashley. That's one reason technology will overtake us. While we can build robots that can learn from their mistakes, I have my doubts that we learn from ours. Maybe our trusting nature is to blame. Me. Memory is fragile and must be passed mimetically from one person to another across the span of generations, and we must listen to each other to learn it. That's where education comes into play and why teacher freedom and textbook veracity and the expectation of access to unfettered facts come into prominence. Without a shared experience, we will always start again from zero. If the human species survives another 100 years, will there be a second Holocaust in our future? Of course. Common memory will fade, and the Holocaust will be forgotten and probably romanticized. It is human nature to repress what embarrasses us and hurts us, and that is when the evildoers strike, when everything feels dense and calm and right in the world. Ashley. Though maybe our trusting nature is what keeps our species alive. We trust that we can be better, so we strive towards that goal. We create things better than ourselves, more predictable, less reactive. I think our trusting nature also propels us towards perfection, not in ourselves, but in our inventions. Me. Suspicion is viral and infective. and really bad for us in what we hope will be a cogent and collective societal memory. Inclusion is everything. Exclusion via false memes and intemperate utterances are the death of us all by 1,000 purposeful blows. The inflection point for change and understanding is always now, and it always starts with you. Cynicism and separation may feel empowering and predictive, but they slowly defeat the all of us through a defeatist disremembering of what really happened. We may not always reinvent the wheel, but there will always be people who think they can draw a better circle. And while that effort is interesting, it isn't terribly useful or necessary in the propagation of new thought or logic or meaning into the future. I propose we close this conversation with a reflexive touchback when the all of us were at stake, and Abraham Lincoln, in his first inaugural address as the 16th President of these United States, said this on Monday, March 4, 1861. In your hands, my dissatisfied fellow countrymen, and not in mine, is the momentous issue of civil war. The government will not assail you. You can have no conflict without being yourselves the aggressors. You have no oath registered in heaven to destroy the government, while I shall have the most solemn one to preserve, protect, and defend it. I am loath to close. We are not enemies, but friends. We must not be enemies. Though passion may have strained, it must not break our bonds of affection. The mystic cords of memory, stretching from every battlefield and patriot grave to every living heart and hearthstone, all over this broad land, will yet swell the chorus of the Union, when again touched, as surely they will be, by the better angels of our nature. Thank you for listening. Be a human meme.